Hey guys, Technomentary here with the video for you guys. We're really excited to be doing this comparison video between the iPhone 11 Pro here and the iPhone 10R or the XR. In this video, we're going to compare everything from the hardware to the software and the overall performance in 2021 between these phones, and I'm going to give you guys sort of the breakdown if you guys are deciding to upgrade from either the iPhone 10R to the 11 Pro, or if you're even deciding to buy either or in 2021. We're going to tell you guys all that and much more in terms of what you're going to get the most out of these two phones. But before we go ahead and get started, if you guys are new to our channel, we do a lot of tech news, reviews, and giveaways, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, if you guys are in the market for one of these phones or a newer phone, make sure you guys check out the link in the description section that we have provided as well. That will give you guys option to buy either of these phones right now at a discounted price, so make sure you guys check that out. So let's go ahead and get started with the review for you guys. So first thing we're going to look between these two devices is that both of these are 1 year apart in terms of their release date. So the iPhone 11 Pro was released in that 2019 September time frame, and the iPhone 10R was released around October of 2018. So it's around 11 months or so, not even a year difference between the phones. The iPhone 10R actually had other lineup that was released, the iPhone 10s and the 10s Max, which were probably the better in terms of feature wise that Apple has released. But none of that. This is a comparison for the 10R. So we're going to talk about the 10R and the 11 Pro here. As you can see here, noticeable difference between these are in the back glass. Both of them does have this back glass. So Apple moved away from that aluminum body. So the back glass allows the phones to be charged wirelessly and such. And it's the other con about it is that they can easily crack like it would crack on the front screen, which wouldn't be possible with the aluminum back. The other noticeable thing in terms of the design here is that the Apple logo is mid on the iPhone 11 Pro, and starting with the 11 lineup, that's what Apple has done. They moved the logo down. Not quite sure why, but as you can see here, in the previous generation, Apple logo was always towards the upper side of the back display. And then the other piece you'll notice is that Apple has started to remove their logo of the iPhone printed on the back. Not sure why exactly, but on the newer phones you won't see that label anymore. That doesn't mean the phone is fake, so it's not an indicator of that. And of course, visually, the other thing that we're going to talk a little bit more later in the video is that the camera itself. As you can see, the 10R only has a single megapixel 12 megapixel camera versus the 11 Pro, which has triple 3 megapixel 12 megapixel camera for ultra wide and that telephoto feature that really does enhance the video. Like I said, we'll go more into that later on part of the video. The other thing we're going to talk about is actually the weight of these two devices. They're about the same. There's not much different. The iPhone 10R actually a little bit heavier. They're around the 6.6 for the iPhone 11 Pro and 6.84 ounce for the 10R. So in terms of that 0.2 difference, you really aren't going to feel that much. It can seem like the 10R is heavier, but not really by much. Very negligible. Of course, the body of these phones, as you can see, are about the same in terms of dimension. If you break down the specs, you'll notice that the iPhone 10R is actually slightly ever so bigger, and that's where we'll talk about the actual display of it, because the iPhone 10R actually has a 6.1 display, where the iPhone 11 Pro has a 5.8 display. And why is that? Well, because the iPhone 10R does not have a max version of it like the 11 Pro does. It has a max edition of it. So in a way, you can think of the 10R as being a device that's sort of the mid between the regular 11 Pro and the 11 Pro Max because of that Max not being there. So Apple probably decided to go with a bigger screen. And talking about the screen and the display itself, there's a huge difference between the display of both of these phones. What's that display difference? Well, first thing we mentioned was that the iPhone XR has a 6.1 display, and the display type here is actually LCD versus the iPhone 11 Pro, which has that OLED display to it. And if we talk about the display size, to give you guys a more accurate number of what the technology is between the display, we really have to talk about the display itself, the OLED versus LCD, which makes it the difference between these that will allow us to kind of talk about in terms of their price point, which the base model of the 11 Pro at a 64 gig comes at the $999, almost that $1,000 price tag, compared to the base model of the XR or the XR, which comes at $749 for that 60 gig model. And that also brings us to the next topic about the storage configuration of these two devices. The storage on the 11 Pro, as you know, comes at 64 gig base, but it's able to actually go up to the mid-grade around 256 gig, and you're also able to get it at a whopping 512 gig versus the iPhone XR, which only maxes out at the 128 gig. So if you're a person that's really looking to get a phone purely on storage and how big that storage is, you might want to consider getting the iPhone 11 Pro. And the other thing we want to go back and talk about is the display itself. We mentioned OLED. Besides the OLED of these have slightly different variation of the actual resolution. The 11 Pro does have a bigger resolution to it. It has that 2436 by 1125 resolution versus the LCD 6.1 iPhone XR, which has that 1792 by 828 pixel to it. And the other piece that's really noticeable is the max brightness between these two phones. The max brightness on the 11 Pro goes up to 1200, where the iPhone XR goes up to only 625, so half the brightness. And that really matters when you're in a bright setting, like if you're outside or doing something where there's a lot of lighting. You're going to notice sort of that difference in terms of the brightness. Let's talk about the other aspect of these two phones in terms of their hardware is their dust, water, and splash resistivity. Both of the phones are water resistant phones, but what sort of water resistivity can you expect? So the XR here is able to be in the depth of 1 meter for 30 minutes compared to the 11 Pro, which can be under 4 meters for 30 minutes. So of course you have a bigger IP rating on the 11 Pro because it is updated and such. But one thing you do want to remember, that any phone, no matter what kind of phone it is, no matter how indestructible it is, if there's a crack or any nick or even a glass damage on the back or front, water can easily get into the phone and you lose that water resistivity of these phones. And then the last piece of hardware we want to talk about is the battery. So the battery life, surprisingly for both of these phones, they're around, if you round up or round down, is around that 3000 mAh mark. And what does that really mean? Well, what that really means is that you pretty much have a similar sort of battery life on these phones, and that battery life has something to do around the video playback, and that's the important thing we want to talk about. The iPhone 11 Pro gives you about, if you're watching videos like Netflix, YouTube and such, you're going to get about 18 hours of video playback if you constantly do that, where the iPhone XR gives you 16 hours, so about 2 hours of difference. How much is that really negligible in terms of the phone? Not really noticeable. If you're a light to medium user, you're more likely you're going to go through the whole day on a full charge. But if you're a person that's a heavy user of the iPhone, that means you're constantly on your phone, glued to it, doing multiple things at once, multitasking, back and forth. Expect you to get you possibly, 2/3 or 3/4 of the day before you need a charge, because even with that 3000 mAh. It's not gonna last you all day if you're a power user that use the phone all day long. And that brings us to the next point of these phones, which is the software on these phones. As you can see here, we have these bigger widget icon because we are able to update both of the phones to iOS 14, which is the latest update for both of these phones. And both of these phones does get that update, iOS 14, which is released for iPhone 11 lineup. And the good thing about both of these phones are they're going to be supported for some time, right? The iPhone 11 Pro, which came out in 2019, or is most likely going to get another 3 to 4 updates, major updates before the iOS updates stop. The 10 are maybe 1 year less, maybe 2 to 3 years, definitely still will get the update from Apple. So that's nothing to worry about if you're buying it for phone that you want for next couple of years. Both of the phones are going to be supported on the major app that's out there, all of the major things that you have. And one thing we want to talk about is the social media on these phones and the software around with it. So both of these phones are phenomenal devices for entertainment, your social media, shopping, productivity tool, gaming wise. So the one thing we talk about gaming wise is with lighter games that you have, you're not going to notice much difference in terms of the speed between these two phones. Where you're going to start to notice is when you start to go ahead and get into heavier gaming. So what does heavier gaming mean? That's if you're playing Fortnite, PUBG, Call of Duty, games that are meant to play on your actual console. That's where you're going to start to notice the difference. You're going to see a little bit of lag on the XR, not that noticeable, but there is a little bit of lag. The iPhone 11 Pro does hold up a little bit better than in terms that it doesn't heat up as fast as the iPhone XR. So XR does heat up a little bit faster, but again, not quite noticeable, really negligible in that aspect. And the last piece we want to talk about is the camera. We mentioned multiple times about the actual physical camera on the back. And the front camera, of course, both of them have about the same sort of camera. So what can you expect with the triple camera on the 11 Pro is that you have 4 times the zoom. So you're able to zoom in and out of the phone here up to 4 times the optical, which is impossible on the XR. The other thing you'll notice is both of the phones, you're able to actually do portrait mode, but it's limited. As you can see on the XR, you have studio light and contour light, so 2 options. Whereas on the 11 Pro, you have studio light, contour, stage light, and all of the extra other features of portrait mode. So you're getting a lot more out of it. And then the other aspect we want to talk about is the actual video itself. So both of the phones are actually able to record from 720 HD all the way to 4K at 60 frames per second. Of course, you get bigger angles and much more in-depth photo on the 11 Pro because of that triple camera upgrade. And that brings us to the final part of the video is which phone should you buy? Should you upgrade from the iPhone XR to the 11 Pro, and if it's worth it or not? So purely if you were to decide on buying a phone current day between the 11 Pro and the XR is going to come down to a couple things. The first thing is camera. What camera are you looking for? Are you a person that's going to be doing a lot of photography and taking pictures and videos and such, and are looking for a display that's really, ambient and up to standard of industry? You might be considering the iPhone 11 Pro because of that upgrade of the camera and that display that we have here, which is a phenomenal display. That's the reason why Apple makes you pay almost $1,000 for that phone. The other thing you want to talk about if you're looking to get the 11 Pro is that storage. So if you find that the 128 gig max on the XR isn't enough for you, you might be looking at maybe the 256 gig or the 512 gig on the 11 Pro. And lastly, the iOS update. If you're person that uses or looking for a phone that you want to get the most out of it in terms of software update, the iPhone 11 Pro, it's going to have one more year more than the 10R in terms of the upgrade itself. Otherwise, in terms of performance, as you saw with apps and all of that, between these two phones, there isn't much to really say because the chipset is only a generation difference between these two phones. The one thing we do want to mention is about budgeting, right? If you're looking for a budget-friendly phone, the iPhone XR, you can pretty much get this phone under $400. Where the 11 Pro, even if you're buying a pre-owned one, you're going to be paying around $700-800 currently in 2021. So that's probably the bigger point is, are you willing to spend a little bit more money, almost double the money you would spend on this phone just for the upgrade for the camera, the display, and just maybe a year more in terms of the actual iOS update. So that's it for the update. Hopefully this video was helpful for looking to compare these phones. Hopefully you guys like this video. If this video is helpful, please make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Also, we want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think between these two phones? Which one do you like? If you're using one of them, how has it been treating you? Leave a comment in the comment section. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.